My name is Dan Nye. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Graphics Group. We're one of the largest producers of spherical graphites globally. And why that's important, spherical graphite is used to make lithium-ion batteries. And approximately 70 kilograms of spherical graphite is used for every lithium-ion battery within every electric vehicle.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for joining us on our humble little show. So we're going to talk about your company today, but I need to start off with the Hong Kong connection because you're listed in Hong Kong. I know you've got OTC, but that's where you're listed. That's your main listing. Why are you now out to talk to the market? Surely you've got all the money you need over there in Asia.
Absolutely, that's a great question. So from our perspective, whereas historically, most of the battery makers for electric vehicles and for renewable energy solutions have been located in Asia. So from our perspective, Asia has been a great location for our listing. As electric vehicles become more prominent, and to give you some numbers behind that, last year about 2.1 million electric vehicles were sold. Fast forward in 2026, it should be about 10 million electric vehicles sold per annum. And fast forward to 2030 and 2035, it should be the order of 1/3 of the vehicles produced annually, which is approximately 30 million electric vehicles compared to 92 million internal combustion engines. So whereas in the past, Asia had been the core of battery production, now it's expanding into Europe, it's expanding into America, parts of Canada. So we're seeking to both leverage our product sales and to leverage our technology to help companies outside the Asian markets produce spherical graphite, which is our core product.
Right. So, and there's a kind of perception of people who look at Chinese companies as being effectively state-owned and therefore state-controlled. Should people from the West be at all concerned about working with or investing in Chinese operations?
So I think, and that's a great question, and there's a number of issues now with companies called VIEs, which are variable interest entities. So from our perspective, when you think of Graphics Group, so I think it's important to think of it as an international company with wholly owned subsidiaries located in various parts of the world. So we are a 100% foreign-owned entity. And we have a subsidiary in mainland China that actually is wholly owned and produces spherical graphite in Heilongjiang province. We also have a subsidiary in the United States, and we're using that subsidiary in the United States to market and sell our technology outside the Asian markets.
Okay, fine. But you understand the importance of dealing with this because we've had companies come on the show. They're working in China, or at least some part of their supply chain is working in China. They feel that margins can be controlled, and therefore the ultimate success of the company can be controlled because of some level of Chinese influence. You would argue your business is not going to be affected by that.
So so we produce a product that is it's a highly processed form of graphite. So we do the processing for it, and that product has a global market price, and that global market price is what is paid by companies in China. It's what's paid by companies in Japan. It's what's paid by companies in the US. And so it's the same as if you think about the other metals that go into a battery, such as cobalt. So cobalt predominantly comes from Democratic Republic of Congo. And so but that's still a internationally purchased product, and it has a floating market price. So whereas our product is needed by every battery maker and every electric vehicle, it will have a global price, and so we sell into that global price.
Okay, so where do you pay taxes? Where do you bank?
So our headquarters are in Hong Kong. And that's where our bank is, HSBC. So we actually would pay, obviously, local taxes for our local subsidiary, but our corporate taxes would be paid into Hong Kong.
Okay, fine. So let's talk about what you are. So you're not a miner. Let's establish that and clear. You are taking graphite from your subsidiary. Or sorry, explain the relationship in terms of where do you get your graphite from?
Yeah, so it's so we're not a miner. When you think of miners, there's numerous risks in the mining sector. Heavy capex. So you've got to find the resource. You've got to be able to get a bank of feasibility study in the resource. You've got to get people and equipment, and then you've got to truck it to your location. So there's a very long tail to be a mining company. We are not a mining company. We are basically industrial level processing business. So we buy from the miners, and we buy their raw material, and we buy graphite. So if you're a steel maker, you buy iron. If you're Alcoa, you buy aluminum. They actually do mine their own metals also. So we buy raw flake graphite, and we process that graphite from its highly irregular form it comes in, which is almost like a scale at the microscopic level. We will go through a process where we will use mechanical and chemical abrasion to that and form those very irregular pieces of graphite into perfect spheres anywhere from 10 to 15 microns in diameter. So that diameter is important because it optimizes the way that the battery makers will take that and compress our material into form the battery anode. So we have a technology and a great deal of experience, which is able to take a very raw material and make it into a usable specialized substance.
Okay, so spherical graphite, very important. Also, the margins are meaningful as well, which we'll talk about in a second here. But you've got a technology. You're currently producing 10,000 metric tons of spherical graphite a year. So you're one of the larger producers out there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. If you look at the numbers in 2019, we haven't seen the numbers in 2020 yet. There was about 200,000 metric tons produced in 2019. We represented roughly 5% of that, and most of the material historically has come from China. What's really interesting to us is that there's many new players that are coming on the market, both in Canada and in Africa predominantly, that they're looking to begin to mine raw graphite. So we think as a business that we can leverage our technology to help them go from raw, which sells for a de minimis amount, $600-700 up to spherical, which sells at somewhere between 3,000 circa US dollars, to coated, which sells between 8,000 and 12,000. So we can help them upgrade their material, which benefits those miners. It also benefits the countries where those mines are established, because that increases employment and also increases the amount of revenue to that business.
So you said your revenue for last year was about 50 million USD, right? So how break that down for me. Where's that revenue come from? Is it entirely spherical graphite?
60% of the revenues last year were actually spherical graphite. We also have a legacy business, which represents a smaller piece of our company. The legacy business is a nice business. It does landscape architectural design for hotels, corporate campuses. Does very much kind of eco-friendly, renewable focused design, but that's very much a smaller piece of our business, slower growth, and as we look forward, it will become a smaller and smaller piece of revenues to the company.
It's 40% of revenue at the moment, though.
Correct. Yeah.
Are you going to spin it out, or does it need to stay in this vehicle?
It's something we can always look into. There are quite strict regulations on spinning pieces of businesses out of Hong Kong listed businesses.
Right.
But it's something that's but when you think of our business, think of spherical graphite and spherical graphite technology, and that's where you'll see the growth. And even if we retain the business internally, it will become a small piece of business business as time goes
But
on.
20 million USD, it's a meaningful business. Some people would be happy with that.
Indeed.
Interesting.
Indeed.
Okay. Anyway, well, let's stick with the graphite bit just so I understand it. So what precisely you said, I get the technology bit, but what is a typical contract like in terms of the outsourced service, that kind of service was kind of like a SaaS solution here for you. And it's a service as a solution for you because it's their graphite, but it's worth $600. You're saying work with us and we can make the convert into $3,000.
So if you look at our existing product, which we make, so we sell that to distributors, we sell that to battery companies directly. So we have a wide variety of customers. As we move forward on the technology side, it's quite interesting. Each of those agreements will likely be a specialized agreement, and whether that becomes a cross ownership, whether that becomes a royalty model, whether it becomes pure consulting, we're still working through those details. And as those emerge, as we get agreements with the places we're speaking with, we'll be able to talk about where that settles.
Right, but you're going to selling it just as a consultancy service. That's long, painful, and costly. So the margins are smaller at that end. You want to be somewhere up around some sort of level of either co-ownership or co-marketing or et cetera, aren't you?
I think the ideal place is being a royalty place. So if you hold a royalty in the business, it's an annuity. Technology advances, you can update that royalty, and it gives you a nice, steady income and with extremely high margins.
Okay, well, here's a strange one for you then. In the past 20 or 30 years, people are very nervous about Chinese companies coming, taking technology, buying technology from the West, copying it, and then using it and then dumping their Western partners. Are you worried about sharing this knowledge of yours with other companies? I mean, do you ever give away the control around the technology or from the conversion from graphite to spherical graphite?
Well, as we work through these, it's an interesting model, isn't it? So it's kind of reverse what people think about Chinese companies in the past. And so just to underscore, we're not a Chinese company. We're based in Hong Kong. We're a national.
I get it, but I'm talking perception as reality here. It's, that's what you've got to battle with.
It's one thing it's a continuous improvement process. So basically, our model is to help companies get to production levels, but you can't rest on your laurels, to quote a very commonly used phrase. It requires continuous improvements, and we do quite a lot of research on the processing side and the materials usage side also. So we'll be able to help clients continue to improve their processing lines, improve their yields. And as technology changes, so right now the battery anode technology is pretty fixed on using spherical graphite. As time goes on, there is ongoing research to using a combination of silicon and spherical graphite. So in that aspect, we'll be kind of using our technology to help clients work with those materials also.
Okay, and so with regards to the contracts that you have in place for the supply of the graphite, which you're purchasing, is that a fixed term? Is that, in which case, what does that look like? And what guarantees have you got that it will still be, coming your way in the next couple of years? Our production volumes, which is 10,000, and we're moving to 40,000, which is an increase of 30,000 over the next 3 years. We are next to the mine. And so we have to pay market price, but there's no limitation to the amount of material. There's no shortage limitation to accessing that material over that period of time. So we have full access to the material we need. So you buy at market. There's no fixed term contract or volume contract.
Yeah, we buy at market. So we buy at market levels, and the actual input volumes for our material we need are secure.
So that's 100% of your supply comes from one source at the moment. Are you looking at other alternative supply solutions?
It's the biggest mine in the world, and it represents circa 60% of the world's production of graphite, and it's good grade. And we're co-located in the same province. So there isn't any need for us to secure material outside.
Not even to mitigate potential risk. You look at Olympic Dam, they shut down last year. They didn't expect to because of COVID. You look at Centamin, they shut down because they had a wall collapse. So there's always things that go wrong in mining. Mining's tough, as you say. You're not exposed to the mining risk, but at the same time, you're kind of exposed to some mining risk. So
if we needed to purchase material outside, then we could execute those contracts.
Okay, fine. Okay. In terms of this new revenue line that you're going for, in terms of what percentage of the company are you aiming for that to represent?
Well, it's really a function of how successful graphite mining companies are outside of Asia. So if the graphite mining, and there's certain areas of the world that have very, very heavy resources. So it's Namibia, it's Mozambique, it's parts of Turkey, parts of the Canadian border with the United States have reasonable resources. So it's a function of how successful those groups are at pulling material out of the ground. So an ideal scenario, I wouldn't want to put a number on it because then it would put us in it would benchmark where we want to grow globally. But I think that it could be a sizable portion of revenues in the future.
Okay, well, let me put it another way then. You've got 50 million of revenues. I don't know what your margin is, but how much of your margin as a percentage will you be allocating towards driving this revenue stream?
So the cost of so how much operational? So it's very capex light. So the cost to expand will be it's firstly reallocating resources. So we won't be taking any risk. The only risk we'll take on equipment will be at expanding our existing line.
Right. Okay. Fine.
So that will function. That will convert from a business as almost there'll be cost allocation involved. But it will result in effectively incremental margin, almost 100% incremental margins for our company.
I know you're on the Hong Kong Exchange, but you're also on the OTC as well. Have you got any plans or thoughts or discussions that have gone on with regards to listing on a main board outside of Hong Kong?
We really can't talk about that at this point in time.
Okay. At the beginning, I asked you, so what do you hope to get from this? And obviously, it's an awareness as Europe builds out its EV arena, and the US is doing the same thing. Asia has been at it for a little bit longer. Are you expecting more conversations in Europe with European partners and US partners? And will you be? I know you're based in London. Obviously, it makes it easy here. But in the US, have you got representation there?
Yes, we have a subsidiary in the US, and we are actively having conversations across North America, actively having conversations across Europe and across Africa with the countries. So what's particularly interesting, if you look how the world is changing, so if you look at this point in time, most lithium-ion batteries are produced in Asia. So you've got a number of very big players in Asia that produce lithium-ion batteries, both for electric vehicles and for buses. There's a real push now to produce the batteries through in the United States and Europe through Tesla's gigafactories, through the factories that are being explored by GM. They need the material. They need the material to produce these batteries, and there's continued tension between the United States and China. I don't know how that will play out, but if I was in the shoes of Tesla or GM, I would probably be thinking, how can I secure supply to the resources I need to produce my lithium-ion batteries? And so certainly lithium is less a risk because you've got two big players working on the lithium sector. Cobalt's a risk because cobalt comes from one jurisdiction, and there's efforts at Tesla to remove cobalt from their batteries to take away that risk. And certainly on the anode side. So when you think about Tesla and GM needing a kilogram of spherical graphite for every 1 kilowatts of power the batteries make, they're going to be carefully looking at supply. And if I were in this scenario, I would be wanting to hedge my risk and have suppliers outside of Asia. So we think, and there's huge opportunities to get graphite companies up that curve very, very quickly, so they can become significant suppliers to North American and European players.
But just does this give us some insight into the way that you're going to try to negotiate discussions? Because typically the European ecosystem, the US ecosystem, with their critical minerals lists and their security around minerals, or at least ownership of minerals, do you think that either you have to set up facilities or you have to go into partnership with groups that can have facilities within those ecosystems? Because the Europeans want to buy from European companies.
Absolutely.
The US want to buy from US companies or friends, being the 51st state up in Canada.
Which is exactly what we're seeking to do. Exactly. So again, as you think about us, you should think about GraphX as international company, local subsidiary that does production in a very kind of graphite rich part of China, and we're cleverly located there. But also we have subsidiaries that are helping exactly those domestic local companies outside of Asia get up that curve and be suppliers to those large OEMs.
Okay. And yeah, I get the OEMs are, they're concerned about their supply chain for 2025, for 2030, 2040, et cetera. And they've got to start tying those things up. But they, like you, don't want to necessarily be in the mining space or be exposed to the risk there. Is it easier for you? Would it be possible for you to partner with the OEMs in terms of the relationships they have with some of these companies?
Yeah, indeed, it's possible. And so we are thinking through kind of different angles on this. And so an angle which we're also thinking not necessarily through the OEMs, but through the legacy suppliers. So the suppliers that currently produce items which may not have as rich a future. So catalytic converters, parts of the internal combustion engine. So they still have deep kind of pathways into the OEM. So that's actually one segment that could be a source to get closer to them. But essentially the OEMs don't want to be miners. You're absolutely right, but they still need to secure those materials. So they will likely buy from distributors or the mines directly.
So can spherical graphite be recaptured, recycled? Does it in any way impair or damage through a recycling process?
So, yeah, if you kind of think just looking through what a battery looks like, so just to give you an example. So when you think of a lithium-ion battery, it's 2 strips of metal. And one strip is your anode. And on the anode, you have your it's called your graphite anode, and you have your compressed spherical graphite on it. In between that strip, you've got a liquid electrolyte of lithium, and then on the cathode side, you have your nickel, cobalt, aluminum cathode. And what happens when you charge the battery? The lithium ions are forced into the graphite anode, and that liberates an electron. It grabs an electron, and then when it discharges, it drops back down, and the electron is released. So, but these 2 strips are rolled in this tight Swiss roll, in this jelly roll, I guess you call it in America, and it's rolled in this tight cylinder. And then it's encapsulated, and it looks almost like a tall C-size battery extended. And you take 7,000 of these and you put them in series together, and that makes your lithium-ion battery in an EV. So could you break all these apart and recycle them? Sure. I don't know if the technology and the energy required to extract the raw materials is economic at this point in time. I mean, I really hope it will be, because I mean, what we don't want to see is to go down this path of green renewables and find out that we're polluting the world to a greater extent, and that's, no one really wants that. But yeah, so could you extract it and recycle it? Yeah, so eventually, probably. But I don't think it's as easy as recycling a catalytic converter and extracting platinum and palladium. It's much more complicated, and you're also dealing with, particularly on the lithium side, potentially toxic chemicals. So it's possible, and there's a number of companies that are attempting to do this. But whether it's economic, I can't answer that question.
Okay, be interesting to see. Again, we've spoken to a few recycling companies. It'd be interesting to see, what materials they're after. And as you say, the economics do come into it. What are some of the new applications for graphene? Because again, it's always mooted as being the next big thing, but it's never kind of quite got there yet. There's lots of patents and there's lots of revenue streams mooted, but where are we? We have the capability to produce graphene. We don't actually currently produce graphene, and we have patents protecting that graphene production. There's interesting. So if you look at graphene, so it's got enormous kind of potential. If you look at the qualities, it's the strongest substance known to man. It's stronger than diamond. It's electrically conductive. It's thermally conductive. And there's real aspirational uses of it. Currently, where it's actually predominantly being used is on the lubricant side and the paint side. So you see it being used to provide lubrication and to provide waterproofing on industrial coatings. But it's beginning to, as production technologies are improving, so producing bigger pieces of it, there's applications which are pretty exciting. So you can use it it's great for actually using it as a membrane material or filter material where you can filter out certain particles. It can be used since it's electrically conductive and flexible. You could use it for advanced displays, so you can use it for wearable displays. We're looking at it as a company on the photovoltaic side, and there's some interesting applications on the photovoltaic side. You can produce very, very thin PV cells. You can even, and this is really bleeding edge, it's possible to extract energy when it's raining by using the potential of the salts and the ions in the water to extract energy from that. So, but that's probably somewhat in the future. So there's I like the sound of that.
Of course, you look at the real science fiction side, and I mean you can produce space elevators with it, and so but that's very much in the future if it ever does happen.
Space elevators. So we won't need that space ladder anymore. Great.
Well, this was the concept, to produce to send cables up in space and have a weight on the end of it, and that would spin around the planet, and you could have a crawler that would go up. Up over a long period of time. That's how you would get objects in orbit. But look, that's actually, it's not something we do, not something we're looking into. But and certainly there are really interesting applications for graphene, but still a very small market.
So you've got a few patents. You've got a few patents there, but it's something to come back to. Key focus for you now is producing spherical graphite and opening up markets for the spherical graphite manufacturer in partnership or somehow with other groups producing graphite. Number one focus.
Leveraging our experience, our technology, and our patents to help graphite producers produce a much higher grade products, so they can sell to OEMs.
Brilliant. Look, Dan, Really enjoyed that. Stay in touch. Let us know how you get on with some. Certainly, I'm keen to understand the types of contracts that you can get into place with some of these groups, because that'll help us better understand the sort of your economics and scale available to you, and indeed, obviously, the ability to get into certain of these, European or American ecosystems. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.